Hello and welcome back to the Dune Minute Podcast, your place to dive deep, minute by minute, into the cinematic adaptation of Frank Herbert's world of Dune. I'm one of your hosts, Zach.
And I'm John.
And today we are testing the Dune Minute Podcast until it breaks.
Ooh, it's going to be a fucking thick episode today. Last week's Wednesday episode was real thin.
Yeah, we're making up for it today.
This week's Wednesday episode, not thin at all. So...
yeah, man, I got a lot of notes. You said that you've got some notes and special surprise.
Yeah, so we were supposed to actually have a guest this week.
Yeah, Buddy Calf was supposed to come back on.
Yeah, Calf was supposed to come back, but unfortunately we've had some scheduling conflicts and stuff. But I do have some notes from Calf, from our good friend of the show, so I will be sharing those as we get to that moment in the minute.
Yeah, you just you gave me a little bit of a sneak peek earlier, and it's a really, really cool perspective that we get from him.
Yes,
today. So
shout out, Calf.
Yeah,
we love you. Sorry that you couldn't make it.
Yep. So yeah, man. So let's dive in. We were talking about minute 137 through 138.
Correct.
And it starts with Stilgar.
Disappointed dad.
Yes. He's got some BDDE, I guess, big disappointed dad energy.
Okay. Yep.
And he's looking at Paul and he repeats, "Give it to me."
Yep. Talking about the Mala pistol that Paul stole off of another one of the Fremen.
Yep. I'm happy to say and happy to see that Paul displays really good range safety with his weapon.
Yep.
As he gives it back to Stilgar, points it at the ground, makes sure it's unloaded, hands it to him. With the
fingers nowhere near the trigger the entire time.
Yep. So really good gun discipline. Gurney trained him well.
Well, he did and he didn't, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. Stilgar turns to Chani and says, "Chani, take charge of the newcomers. See that they are safe for the journey. Let's go."
Yep. And R.J. Jamis.
Well, hang on one second.
Oh.
Is this the first time that we hear Chani's name?
Yes.
I thought it was.
Yes.
Yep. I couldn't remember anything in the dream sequences.
No,
from the movie.
There's no names from any prescience or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's always just been this mysterious girl. So yes, This is the first time that Chani is actually named.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. So she nods in acknowledgement to Stilgar's order and starts to go off, or starts to head off, I should say.
All of them do.
Yeah.
Stilgar, Paul, Jessica, and Chani. But
fucking goody two shoes back here.
Fucking R.J. Jamis is he's got some other ideas.
Yeah.
And he immediately stops Stilgar as they begin walking away and says, "I will not have them."
Did you look at Chani's face as he said this?
Yeah.
Like as she turns around,
she's like, "This motherfucker."
I know. She's like, "What the fuck is this guy on about right now?"
So yesterday we talked about how Zendaya has a really good resting bitch face.
Yeah.
But she also has a really good "Are you fucking serious?" face, which are two very different faces, by the way.
Yeah. Well, she's a very expressive actor.
Yeah.
So
she has one of the more expressive faces. And just the heaviest eye roll here.
I know, it's so funny.
It's so good.
So she turns around. Paul turns around.
Jessica turns around. Stilgar does not turn around.
No.
Back to Jamis the whole fucking time.
Yeah. Paul turns around.
Stilgar's a sassy bitch. What can we say?
He is a sassy bitch.
Yeah.
Paul turns around, and this is the first time that Paul sees Jamis without his face coverings on.
Correct.
And we get that same look of recognition.
It's almost a look of sadness. You definitely see Paul's brow soften, and he's kind of like, "Oh fuck." That's at least the way that I see it.
Yeah. Well, my notes say he seems to recognize Jamis, or Paul's a Fremen racist and they all look the same to him.
Jesus Christ. I mean, he is a sheltered white boy that grew up on a completely different planet, so who fucking knows?
I'm going to assume that he recognizes him from his visions.
From his many visions that were very recent, by the way.
Yeah, they were. Again, sassy Stilgar. He just like sighs and he sounds so exasperated when he does this.
Disappointed dad.
It's like we get an explanation of this in the books, which is pretty much like Stilgar is talking to Jessica at some point, which I'll talk about in a little bit later. And he pretty much says, yeah, Jameis is always fucking like this. He's like, he's
this
not
fucking guy.
He's like, he's a good fighter. That's why I bring him on with these things. But he's like, he's a fucking weirdo. And he goes, Stilgar says again with his back still turned to Jameis, Jameis, I have spoken, be still. So I'm not going to do this, but I thought it would have been really funny if they went into like a who's on first type of bit here. Yeah. Like, no, you're still, I'm Jameis.
Oh God. That'd be good.
Yeah.
That would. Jameis's response though is very important.
Yeah.
He says, you talk like a leader, but the strongest leads. She bested you. Talking about Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
I invoke the Amtal.
Yeah. He's like fully trying to big dog Stilgar in this moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you say we dip into Kath's notes here? Because I think I would love to hear this from his perspective.
Yep.
What the Amtal rule is. So
Kath provided me a little bit of a blurb here and some explanation separately from this blurb and everything. So I'm just going to read it exactly as he wrote it because I don't want to put words into his mouth. Some context though, because this is stuff that he did talk about during his week that we had him as a guest. Mm-hmm. Kath is of Arab descent. He's from Lebanon. He was born in Lebanon and came to the United States for school and everything. So this is all very directly,
mm-hmm. So this
from his lived experience and everything.
So this Amtal that's a real thing that exists in some form now.
Kind of. We're gonna get there.
Okay.
So this is directly from Kath in the notes that he sent me. Amtal in Arabic is the plural form of the word matal, which can be translated to, quote, example, but in reality it's meant here as, quote, proverb, because a proverb is just an example being put forward to words so it carries tradition and time. In fact, when you're reciting a proverb, you would start by speaking, the matal says, all in Arabic, of course. Mm-hmm. I can see that being used as a literal death match because of the groundwork in the Dune universe of the Amtal is, quote, to truly understand something as it must be pushed beyond its limits. As that sounds like a proverb in within itself, I thought it was a cool way to take what could have been a common saying where social or religious, most likely passed down through time, or the Bene Gesserit, to make its way to the Fremen people, and its application be the most of the hardcore version that it can be. I mean, that's who the Fremen are, truly a bunch of hardcore badasses.
Yeah, exactly.
So Kath kind of gives us a little bit of the real life of the Amtal and the Matal.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are a lot of similarities and there are some differences, and we know that Frank Herbert had a lot of influence from Arabic culture, obviously, when writing Dune and creating Fremen society and everything for the first time.
Yeah,
but to see it as like a real thing, and proverbs being and custom and tradition being important to Stilgar. Mm-hmm. When Jameis invokes the Amtal, Stilgar takes that seriously, and this is actually the moment where we see him turn around.
Yeah. So, what is he testing? Like, what is the context behind him invoking this? Because clearly, it's a serious matter.
Sure. So, invoking the Amtal is effectively saying Jessica's fucking bullshit. Yeah. And I'm going to prove that not only are you Stilgar weak, but so is she.
Yeah.
He's essentially challenging her rule, quote unquote, because she bested Stilgar, who I guess previously had the respect and or besting of these other people in his group.
Yep.
Though had he truly bested them, they would not be alive.
Sure.
So,
sure. Well, he bested the prior leader.
Sure.
So the book goes into a little bit more of the reasoning why this happens.
Yep.
There have been a lot of conversations up to this point in the book about, do Jessica and Paul fit the prophecy? Are these the people that they've been, waiting for? Yada, yada, yada.
And we'll get more into that later on in this week.
Yeah, a little bit more. I think most of that is going to have to come in the second movie.
Sure,
we don't.
But we get some inklings of it.
We really just like dip a toe into it.
Yeah, we get some inklings of it in this week's minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but not until I think Friday's episode.
Something like that.
Thursdays. Sorry.
So we are. Jameis is putting that notion, like the notion that Stilgar keeps saying, like, oh, they're or at least in the books anyways, oh, there's these are the Lisan al-Gaib, these are the people that we've been waiting for. He's trying to put that to the test now.
Yep.
To say, okay, if they truly are the people that you say they are, then we have to, as Kath said, take it to the breaking point. We have to test this to the fullest extent.
And Amtal isn't just a interpersonal culture thing. It is Fremen culture as a whole.
Yeah.
So Amtal has existed not only for people, but for maker hooks and for thumpers and for sand compactors and fremtents and all of these things, because it is it is refining and refining and shaping until you approach perfection.
Yeah.
And the ultimate test of the Amtal is Shai Hulud himself.
Sure.
Right. Shai Hulud being the one exception to the Amtal rule, because Shai Hulud has proven his own worthiness of existence.
Yeah.
It's almost like a proving of your right to exist kind of mentality.
I think that's a good way of looking at it. Or at least in this context anyways.
I have analogies that can be made for an incredibly limited audience, so I'm not going to.
No, go for it.
So Amtal kind of exists as an idea in, as you know, I play a lot of Destiny. Kind of exists in that universe, but it's under a different name of the sword logic, which is a continuous proving of a right to exist through combat.
Okay.
And it's almost like a bastardization of survival of the fittest, but it's more of survival of the dominant kind of thing.
Okay.
As everything approaches perfection and finality.
Gotcha. So. Okay, cool. I do miss playing that game sometimes.
No, you don't.
No, I genuinely do. It was very fun. It was very fun.
It's very different than it was 10 years ago when you played.
Yeah, I know. But before I had to have online friends, I enjoyed playing that.
Sure. All right.
I want them to make single player non-online video games.
You would love Red Dead Redemption 2 then.
That's too much. It's too open world for me. I get lost in open world games, man.
That's the point.
No, I like being on a path. That's why I like Portal so much.
All right. Fair. You start here. You need to end up here. You have 2 portals. Figure it the fuck out, bitch.
Yeah, and I go, got it, boss. Clocking in. I got it. Well, that's cool. I thank you, Kath, for those notes. I have nothing real to add to that. I mean, that's a really good explanation of what Amtal is.
Yep.
I especially love that line of in order to know a thing well, you have to test it or know its limits.
Yep.
I love that. That's really, really cool. I think that can apply in a lot of everyday life situations as well.
Yeah.
So, cool. So Jameis is trying to test this thing that Stilgar has been saying, and that involves a fight.
And it involves testing Jessica and, by extension, her champion.
Yep.
Now, Stilgar says an incredibly important line in response to Jameis's incredibly important line about invoking the Umtal.
Yeah.
And Stilgar says, "You may not challenge a Sayadina."
A Sayadina. Man, they are just
We're
unloading.
This is a lore heavy week.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
What is a Sayadina, Zach?
So a Sayadina, and that is a term used by the Fremen to describe the lower ranking priestesses who have not yet undergone the super special stuff that we will talk about next movie in order to become a Reverend Mother.
They haven't drank the Kool-Aid fully.
Yeah, quite literally. Yes. Yeah, so him calling Jessica a Sayadina carries a lot of weight right here. They have known each other for what, 10 minutes at this point, I guess.
3.
Yeah. I mean, from when they entered into the cave and all the Fremen started popping up around them to now has not been a lot of time.
No.
So for Stilgar to already be calling Jessica Sayadina that's a big deal. So Jameis is like, nah, fuck this, dude. Stop calling her that shit. You don't know her. But yeah, it is a Sayadina is one of their, like a Fremen priestess pretty much. And he must have been really impressed with the way that she fought for him to like go and like put this title upon her already. And we've talked about how eager and willing Stilgar is to see the prophecy within them. So he's already he's maybe not fully in their camp, but he's got, most of his body in their camp already.
Yep.
So this is a big deal. This is a really, really big deal for them.
Just doing.
This is slightly different from the books. In the books, like they talk about the prophecy and how it was always the Bene Gesserit would come and her son would be the person to fight. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself in the notes here, but so they don't, this like distinction, like, no, you can't fight her because she's a Sayadina. That's something that's made up for the movie. It was always, or at least according to the books, it was always supposed to be the son of the Bene Gesserit would be the one who needs to be tested, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or would act as her champion.
Which he does.
Yeah, which he does. So Stilgar, you cannot challenge a Sayadina. And then Jameis responds, then who will fight in her name? Stilgar he's just like, don't do this, man.
Don't fucking do this.
Yeah. He just wants to get home.
The night is fading. Yeah. It's such a clever way of just being like, bitch, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. And credit where credit is due. We've talked about how Stilgar has some quips and he's sassy. Jameis is giving it right back to him.
Right back to him. And he says one of my favorite lines in the whole movie right here.
Yeah.
Then the sun will witness this death. Where is her champion?
Yep. So I want to pause just for a second and think about Paul.
Okay.
So I'm going to go basing this on the assumption that he recognized Jameis.
Yep.
The Jameis that Paul has seen up until this point is a very different Jameis than we've got on screen.
Right. Because Jameis and Paul's memories, I mean, the own voices have told Paul to follow the friend. Jameis in Paul's memories in Paul's visions has been nothing but incredibly helpful. I mean, this Jameis is also standing at Paul's side during during the jihad.
Follow the friend,
and he's standing at Paul's side as they are on Caladan, and the Fremen are looking up at Paul in this ship.
So we don't really know the extent that Paul's remembers his visions like this. And we also have to keep in mind that they are not set in stone.
No.
Everything is constantly in motion.
They're one of many possibilities.
Yeah. But we, the audience, have seen a very different Jameis up until this point. So it was, I remember the first time seeing this, I was like, what the fuck? That guy's supposed to be good. He's supposed to be on our side. Why is he acting like this?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was wondering how much whiplash Paul was going through right now.
Oh, I'm sure he's just in his own head being like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
because Jameis is thirsty for blood at this point. And he's not acting very friend-like.
No, he's incredibly hostile. And Paul, I'm sure, is more than confused.
Yeah. So everyone kind of looks around, like when he says, who will be your champion? Or where is her champion?
Yep.
Everyone kind of like looks around, shuffles their feet, kicks dirt a little bit, and is like, I'm not
dying for this bitch.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like in class when you didn't want the teacher to call on you to read or something. They're just like looking around, trying not to make eye contact. And then Paul makes the first move and starts to walk towards Jameis.
And the minute ends with them just staring each other down.
Yeah.
Hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I've said, this part in the movie, the book equivalent happens like 2 chapters from when they first meet. So there's a considerable amount of time that lapses before this fight with Jameis.
Mm-hmm.
I understand kind of accelerating the pace of this just so it happens quicker.
Well, it also gives the movie a point to end on too.
Sure. There's a scene that's missing that I really, really wish they would have kept in the movie. We've talked a lot about how certain things they cut out because it's not really part of the story that Denis Villeneuve is trying to explain.
Sure.
I think he's on record of saying like this is a story about the Bene Gesserit more than anything.
Yeah, he's quite on record talking about that, especially with like a lot of the press around part 2 and everything, because people had questions about like, hey, what the fuck, is going on with, the Mentats and what's going on with, everything else in the universe. And he's just like, nah, this is a Bene Gesserit story.
So yeah. And that's kind of why I'm like, why didn't they put this scene in? So the scene from the book is after they leave this place. So they don't fight here in this little canyon that they're in. Well, they don't fight more than we've already seen. And they go to a second location.
A secondary location.
Yeah, they go to a second location. Still making their way back to Siege Taber. And Jessica and Stilgar have a very, very like deep conversation.
Yeah.
Where Jessica is trying to figure out the extent that Stilgar believes in the prophecies and believes in all the things that the Bene Gesserit have like planted in his mind.
Yeah, she's trying to figure out how much she can manipulate him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we get him telling Jessica how Jameis is hot-headed and things like that. And but it really like during this part, it's where we see the solidification of Stilgar being like in her camp. Yeah. Like a full like acolyte level devotion to her. So
well, maybe not to her directly, but to the prophecies, to everything that the Bene Gesserit have been planting for hundreds or thousands of years.
Yeah. Yep. She does some like Bene Gesserit stuff and does some like cool memory recall from things that she learned in school. And she like recites a poem or like a passage to him. And he's just like, oh my God. Oh! Yeah. So, but we also talk a lot about like, we get to see Jessica's opinion really on the Bene Gesserit manipulation of like how she feels about them just going into cultures and really
fucking everything up.
Yeah, pretty much. She's not a big fan.
Yeah,
truth be told. She's like, I hate that this stuff is here, but hey, I guess it's helping me out now, so I'll use it.
Yeah.
She is remarking about the extent that the Bene Gesserit words and prophecies have shaped the Fremen culture. She's like, I didn't even know it was going to be this bad or good, depending on your perspective, I guess. So yeah, it was just a really, really good scene. And I hate that they didn't keep it in because it is directly about the Bene Gesserit and how they operate. So after reading back through it for these notes, I was like, man, I wonder if this was like one of the harder cuts, like the scenes to be cut out.
I just don't think it would have. It would have been a lull in the rising tension, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
And we kind of get, in so many ways, we kind of get this scene, but it's not between Stilgar and Jessica in part 2, but kind of jumping ahead a little bit just to make a point here. But in the scene where in part 2, when Stilgar is sitting with all of the other elders in Sietch Tabir, and he is really lobbying hard that Paul is the Muad'Dib.
Yeah,
that Paul is the Lisan al-Gaib in this moment, I think is where we kind of get some remnants. But it's still important because Jessica isn't there to recognize, like, oh shit, like I can actually like fuck these people up.
Yeah, that's fair. We're introduced a lot more to the backstory and the lore and like the religious elements of everything that we're seeing here in part 2.
Yeah. Because you got to remember too, part 1 was made and then part 2 wasn't greenlit until after part 1 had even come out.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I don't think they wanted to leave too many open threads in the off chance that it didn't work out or whatever.
Yeah.
Thankfully for all of us, it did.
Yeah.
So
that's very true. So I understand it. I understand why this was kind of punted backwards into part 2.
Yeah.
Or at least, the framework of that conversation was, but it's just a really good conversation. And it expands upon Stilgar's like place in the Fremen society as well.
Society. They're fucking sick, dude.
It really expands upon Stilgar's place in the Fremen society. And Jessica goes so far as to say, like, I know I kind of kicked your ass back there. Is that going to make you look bad? She's like, sorry
to make you look like a little bitch.
I mean, pretty much. She's like, a good leader should not be, or they should fear a good leader or some. She says some lines like that. And Stilgar's basically like, nah, fuck those guys. This whatever. or he says like, I'd like to see them try to best you or something like that. So, it's a good scene, but we'll get more of that in part 2. So that's my.
And we'll have a lot more to talk about like the Sayadina and everything in part 2 as well.
Oh yeah,
because there's some interesting questions that come up that aren't quite relevant just yet,
sure.
But they will be. So I'm looking forward to having those conversations too.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'm looking forward to, man?
Wrapping this episode up.
Wrapping this one up.
And recording 2 more before you leave and then have to go do other stuff for the weekend.
I was going to say keeping on talking about this movie, but okay. Right. Yeah.
Same thing.
All right, cool. Anything else on your end?
Nothing from me. Just want to thank Calf again for all of his notes and stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry that we couldn't have you on this week, but we'll have you back at some point.
For sure. All right, cool. Well, we have a new social now, and I have not committed that one to memory. So will you give us the socials?
So, as always, you can find us online. On Instagram, we are at The Dune Minute. On Twitter, we are at Dune Minute. On Blue Sky, we are at Dune Minute. And you can email duneminute@gmail.com if you'd like to get in touch with us. We will be back tomorrow with a Thursday episode. And we'll see you then.
All right, see you.